Excellence, Ms. Beyonce Gowanas, the UN Under-Secretary General and Special Advisor Designate to the Secretary General on Africa, who is with us here today. Very honored to have her. If she can please join us on stage. We will also have His Excellence, the former President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellence John Mahama. Another discussant on this panel will be Mark Percy, the founder and managing partner of BTB Advisors. We will have Nisa Leone of our own Commonwealth Africa Initiative. And the Melrose Nicole Wilson, the ombudsman of the Republic of Sierra Leone, is she with us? There are elections I hear in Sierra Leone, so she might not have been with us. All right. And to introduce and moderate this panel is Ms. Tosin Idu, the country director of Lee HD and the media officer of the Commonwealth Africa Initiative. It's going to be a very exciting panel. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you all for attending this summit. And I also want to welcome our colleague Mohsen Abbas. She's a young leader as well. And I believe we will see Mr. Mark Percy. This plenary session, we're going to be discussing how can we accelerate women and young people into decision-making positions in Africa. Only last year, in France, Estonia, Ireland, and Austria, young leaders were elected under the age of 31. So I would like to present a question to our speakers, saying if they really think this can be a possible scenario in Africa. So I would like to address this question specifically to His Excellency Mr. Mahama, as he was already in power, so he can give us an advice on this. Yes, of course. So as I was saying, in Europe, only last year, in Ireland, France, Estonia, and Austria, under 31-year-old leaders were elected in political positions. So is it possible this scenario can ever take place in Africa at some point?
Yeah, it's happening already. I mean, the demographics of Africa guarantee that the age for leadership will continue to reduce. I don't know which of you saw a video recently of Mo Ibrahim in a panel with President Obasanjo and others, and he was talking about the average age of African leadership, and he said it doesn't work out because Africa is the continent with the fastest growing youthful population. And so why would you have an average age for leadership at almost 70 years? And so it is going to happen by the demographic, and younger people are going to come into office. I came into office as the first post-independence leader of Ghana. I was born after my country got independent. Before that, every other leader had been born before Ghana became a country. And so I became the first. I lost the election. It's gone back to the pre-independence era. But I'm sure that it's going to come back, and generationally more people are going to come into office. In Ghana, the Constitution stipulates 40 years as the age for which you can contest the presidency. But with every elective office, if you are 18 years and above and you qualify to vote in an election, then you're qualified to run for any elective office. And there's already a clamor to reduce the age for the presidency. And I believe that it's right, we should reduce it. I mean, why should it be 40 years? I mean, with innovation, with social media, with better quality education, and the kinds of experiences that our young people are going through, they are better prepared for leadership than we were in our generation. And so the age for ascending to the highest office of the land must, reduce so that more young people can ascend to that office.
Thank you very much. I would also like to welcome, apologies for that, Mr. Ope Rossi, who will also be joining us to these discussions. I don't know how So, moving on now to resilience, representing government, I would like to ask, what are the tools to empower women, also into key point posts within politics? How can we make that happen?
We can't hear you very clearly. I think.
Yeah, that's not me.
Yes.
Okay. Second now?
Well,
Let's try.
Okay. Yes, I would say, how can we empower women, or what are the tools that we can manage to enable them to achieve key positions within politics across Africa?
Thank you very much. You know, I've heard this word. How can we empower women? Who are the we that empowers? I think one should understand the issue here. One is women are not excluded because they are stupid or they are less intelligent. They are excluded because of their gender. So rather than empower them because we have the power, we must remove the barriers that stops them from occupying the positions that they can. I mean, it's the same thing with race. Black people were not excluded because they were less intelligent. They were excluded because of their race. So this is really the issue. Empowerment assumes that somebody has got the power that they want to share with you in order to empower you. I think the point that I'm making is that women are powerful in their own right. Just give them opportunity.
if I just have to what she said, our educational system prepares us for leadership. Before, women were excluded from gaining education. If a family had to make a decision about, based on limited resources, who to send to school, to send a boy and leave a girl. Since we implemented the Millennium Development Goals, we have achieved gender parity in many countries in terms of boys and girls going to school. And in Ghana, we're seeing a situation where we probably need to come out with a policy for the boy child, because now more of them are dropping out of school. Girls are staying in school. Girls are qualifying with better, qualifications than boys. The girls are getting smarter than the boys, and so the question is, why doesn't that transform into their influence in decision making? And that is because of our traditional society. It has inculcated a certain reticence for leadership in girls. If you go to our traditional societies and the chief is holding court, the men sit in front, they are allowed to speak, the women must normally not speak, they just sit in the back and listen. And so when you have the kind of politics we have, which can be quite skullduggery, I mean, no holds barred, backstabbing and all that, sometimes women are a bit afraid of that kind of environment. And so you find that elected positions are available, but the number of women who would want to step into the arena and have that kind of scrutiny and, your life being talked about and, the kinds of lies that are told about you and all that kind of thing, it makes a lot of them shy away. So how do we encourage them and say, look, there's something that leadership is, we must have equal participation in leadership. Women are more than men in Ghana, 51%. How can 49% of us take all the decisions when 51% of the population is excluded? And so there are mentorship programs that are encouraging women to step up to the plate and run for elective office and get voted for. If they stood for elections and 51% of women were voting for women, I'm sure that they'll take over, all our countries, and that would be a good thing because, as president, I had women in key positions, and for most of the ministries in which I appointed women, I made the most progress, and I got the best performance.
on what His Excellency has just said. I think in the majority of instances where we have achieved gender parity, it did not just come as a magic wand. There was deliberate action. In Namibia, we had, for example, what we call the zebra, which means the ruling party deliberately made a policy to say that when we are electing as the ruling party, when we are going for elections, it will be 50-50. And to that extent, we have today a parliament where we have got more women in parliament than we ever had since Namibia's independence. When the Secretary General says that he has achieved gender parity, again, it was not a magic wand. He, as the head of that institution, took a deliberate decision to say, I will achieve gender parity, and the same as His Excellency is saying. A lot depends on the leadership that says we will have women, and they will find us. We are all over the place. It is just that put us in there and we will deliver.
Thank you very much for your inputs. I would like also to have the thoughts of Mr. Persay. I believe he has been an advisor to many different political parties across different continents. So we can have your thoughts on this specific topic. How can we actually, what are the tools that, because we speak about empowerment, we speak about motivating and including young people, women, but what are the tools actually to achieve that?
Well, I think the point has already been made that we have to make alterations to the electoral system or the systems internally in political parties to ensure that both youth and women are included and encouraged. And I think you can see that that's happened in a lot of countries in Africa, especially English-speaking Commonwealth countries in Africa, usually by actually having separate women MPs. And that's been very successful in terms of getting numbers up, for instance. I mean, it's done in Uganda, it's done in Kenya, and it's been successful in terms of percentages. But where I think that is personally not a good idea, and has its limits, is that it means that women are considered something separate. And I think that actually the answer to this issue could be found here in England, which is bizarre, considering Britain doesn't have the best reputation or success in terms of encouragement of women in politics or in elected office. It's not the worst either, but we have used, and we have not changed here, the electoral system of constituency-based first-past-the-post contests. And that is the electoral system of most of the countries who are represented in this room today. But what has been done has been the implementation of all women shortlists or selection of candidates or parties for certain constituencies. So that has maintained the direct representation between a physical geographical area and a type of person who lives there and Parliament, which you do not get necessarily, and usually do not get, with women-only MPs. And I think that connection is critically important in governance, of a geographical area to Parliament. And so there is a saying in election campaigning that of putting a dead cat on the table. And that means, if I was to pull out of my pocket a dead cat and put it on the table there, you'll all be shocked. And that's the point, that's why you do it. And I think that we all must appreciate that there are, it's quite a male society, a lot of African countries, a lot of countries around the world. And that I think that getting political parties to agree all women shortlists for constituency MP selections in African and Commonwealth politics would be the way forward to ultimately keep that connection between geography and Parliament and bring women into the actual centre of politics rather than just get their numbers up in terms of representation on a sort of in a specialist that's for women section. There was a lot of opposition in Britain 20, 30 years ago when these all-women shortlists first came up. And a lot of it was sexism, and that sexism was manifested by the fact that while women did win selections without women shortlists, and women were represented in Parliament, a lot of men, and frankly a lot of women, thought that these women might be women, but they weren't really ladies. You know, they were kind of manly, you know? Margaret Thatcher, for example. You know, I mean, she had, frankly, I know it's a family event, but she had bigger balls than most of the men, didn't she? So, and that's the situation that it was. And I think that has to be done. So if my plea or my suggestion would be, just as a dead cat was put on the table all those years ago in Britain to the horror of everybody that all women-only shortlists at constituency geographical representation was necessary. I think it's necessary in Commonwealth countries and particularly African countries where the parliamentary system is fundamentally the same as here.
Thank you very much. I would like to move on to Mrs. Mosinabas. As a young leader yourself, you formed in 2017 the Omo Yoruba Group after living 5 years in Japan. So I would like to ask you, what are the challenges you're facing, or what have you seen as a problem in terms of wanting to I would say, achieve good things for the young people in the diaspora? Okay.
First, I'd like to say, yes, I lived in Japan for nearly 5 years, and while I was out there, I taught English. I was always asked, where are you from? I'm British, but then in the UK, I was asked, where are you from? I'm Nigerian. And then while I was in Japan, I was studying my master's, and I went to do an internship in Nigeria. Where are you from? I'm Nigerian. Why are you asking me? You know. No, you have a British accent, you're not Nigerian. So I had an identity crisis. And so when I moved back to the UK, I had an identity crisis, especially when you're in Japan. They keep repeating to themselves, I'm Japanese, right? So I came to the UK, and I came back to the UK just over a year ago, and tried to understand, where am I, and who am I, where am I from? So I started to look into this, study about my heritage and because I'm of Yoruba descent. So I looked into it and I realised there's a lot of young Africans here who don't know much about their descent. They just know where their parents come from and then say, okay, I'm Nigerian, I'm Ghanaian, and so on. And it shocked me how much we don't know, because I felt that a lot of us here as young professionals, we have passion, we have ideas that we could bring back home, but we didn't have that connection to back home. Unfortunately, we weren't familiar with, some of us had only been to the UK, to our home countries maybe one time in our life. So I thought, no, we need to encourage this in order to become patriotic, in order to bring back these ideas to our country as well. So I started to look into, how can I achieve this, So I started to read up upon my heritage, and I encourage others to, join me in doing so. And my ultimate goal is, by doing so, we can encourage patriotism and then the investment back into our country, that will empower us, share our ideas. Because a lot of us have travelled, we have the opportunity to stay in the UK as well. Get a UK passport, which allows us to go travel around, bring back some new ideas. I believe it was, voyagers, we're like voyagers. So we see what other people are doing and how it's working. And we want to take it back to the UK. But the challenge we have now is also us in the UK who haven't got that connection and just staying here. So I want to encourage those to, look into your heritage and get connected back to your country. And for those in our country as well to accept us as we are one of them. I mean, there is a growing number of what they say repats now, you know, of us going back to the country, right? Which is great, and I think it's great, but I want more of it to be like, no, this is home. We're not repats and anything, this is our home, you know? So I think it's a two-way thing that we're challenging. It's a two-way thing we're challenging right now. Us being accepted as well as us getting into it. So, like I said, I started the Oma Yoga group and it's been growing, and I'm really happy. But my own challenge as well is the sources of information I need to share with my own people here. How can I start that? Because, for example, as a yoga person, who can I get to teach us yoga history? Who can I get to teach us yoga dance without going to a university? It should be available everywhere. You know, you have the Chinese who go to the Chinese school on weekends, you know, and that's where they have that strong connection to say, I'm Chinese, I want to go build a business back in China because I'm familiar with that culture, you know, or Indians as well. When I go and pick up my nieces and nephews, when their parents are of Indian descent or just usually non-African descent, as soon as you pick them up, they're speaking their language, right? But when I pick up my nieces and nephews, or their mother's picking up, they're speaking English. So there's just this disconnect, and I think by encouraging us to look into more than just the money of Africa, the opportunities in Africa, but also our heritage, to realise, oh look, I'm also, by starting these businesses, I'm helping my people develop, you know. So if we are welcome, I want us to be more welcome, opportunities for us to be more welcome in our countries, as well as providing sources of information on how to engage with our own community. I think that would lead the young people, empower the young people also back home, and stimulate many careers opportunities as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
I will have now Mr. Ope Rosewik to give us his thoughts about this specific topic as well. As a young leader in the UK and also of Nigerian origin, do you think we're facing too many challenges when we want to succeed abroad or go back home, and as most Nigerians should say right now, build businesses in our country of origin? What would you say about that?
Thank you very much. Okay, firstly, I'd like to identify the major problem. Personally, I think it's limiting young people from maximizing their potential back home, and that's our social-cultural values. I mean, like, as Africans, our culture is great. I love our culture. Yoruba. If I saw Mrs. Alakita, I'll probably dobale. That's what we call it for sure. It's amazing, and respect is one of our core values. But I think it's high time we separated our culture, I mean our family and our religion and certain cultures from organizational culture. Because I mean, it's fine to respect you. I totally respect other ones and all. But if we're sitting in a meeting, you shouldn't shut me up, or you shouldn't make me talk last, because I'm the youngest. It's high time we just we draw a line and set boundaries between. Let's leave all that for family meetings and when we get back. Let's give young people the opportunity based on merit, qualification, experience, you know, and it's deeply rooted in all our systems, you know, public office, and everyone talks about political aspirants, or they're not enough young people, but it's deeper than that, you know, like people are not getting promotions, civil servants, and they're more qualified than the people that have been there for so long, you know, so it's high time we just separated organizational culture from our core values as Africans. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'd like to point out the fact that the young people right now are doing a lot in the social entrepreneurship space, and I'd just like to use this opportunity to encourage everyone here to look beyond just setting up a business for profit motive. You know, it's high time we set up systems and processes that actually add societal value. You know, more with the exposure we have, it's high time we set up, like I said, systems and processes that actually aid our development and promote social wealth as well. Because I mean, like, the young people are doing so much. We're more exposed. We're very creative. We're willing to take risks. So yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
what I have to say.
There's just this strange experience. as vice president to my predecessor who passed away, unfortunately, and then I got sworn in as president, and then I stood for election and won. He brought a lot of young people into his government and put them at the position of deputy ministers. And so they learned on the job. And so when he died and I became president, a lot of these have been working as deputy ministers for 4 years and had garnered quite a lot of experience. So it became easy for me to just elevate them into ministers of state. So I had an average age of ministers that was much younger than any government that had been seen in the history of Ghana. Of course, the more experienced and elderly people were not too happy about it. And so there was this thing about he surrounded himself with small boys. He surrounded himself with young people who don't have any experience. And unfortunately, the young people themselves bought into it because they had been classmates with these young people in school. Then suddenly, the person becomes a minister. Of course, you have to give him accommodation, give him a good car to drive. And so suddenly he sees his mate who was with him in the same class driving a classic car because he's a minister now, he's got accommodation, he's got a bodyguard and all that. And so the young people's psyche itself was affected and bought into it. And I found them the ones repeating it and saying he surrounded himself with young people, he surrounded himself with small boys who have no experience. You know, and it was strange. I mean, we must celebrate youth who rise to positions of influence and into decision making. And as young people, we must celebrate their success and not, feel a certain, antipathy towards them because us and them were schoolmates and how come he's got into this position and I'm still here and all that. And so it's something that I just thought about when he was talking about.
I'd like to just add something to what you said. I think another problem with young people in business and public office in Africa is the fact that being young is somewhat way attached to being not credible. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone. Yeah, so for example, when I started my business, I literally go with proposals because it's a food business and most people in that space weren't doing what exactly I wanted to do. So I'll go with proposals, PowerPoint presentations, everything properly listed out, my nice suit, everything. And some people ask, how can we entrust you with this? And the only reason why they're asking me that question is because I'm young. I'm not because I have a beard. And it's just really funny how we haven't gotten over certain things. It's 2018, it's the 21st century. Some of these beliefs and norms, I understand the fact that we're deeply rooted in our culture, but some of these things need to go. We can't take the mentality of what the elderly person sees sitting down, the young person can't see from when the young person has an MD and a PhD. So it's high time thank you very much. So it's high time we came to the point whereby we realized that everything should be done based on merit, everything should be done based on qualifications, everything should be done based on experience and how we've proven ourselves, not age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd just like to ask you, as the young speakers in this specific session, do you think back home we do have the tools to actually develop new businesses and promote entrepreneurship of young people?
Well, I haven't had I think you are seeing a growing number of businesses with young leaders, such as in Nigeria, Jumia, the Amazon of Africa. There still are plenty of challenges. I think they said doing business, for example, in Nigeria is 10th from the bottom. So there are still challenges with businesses, but as more young people are getting involved, I think it's getting better because they are the ones who are seeing the weaknesses and being innovative. How can we overcome those challenges? But at present it's difficult. I mean, I can't speak much because I'm based in the UK and I haven't started a business out there. But I know there are challenges from a lot of my friends, and they feel discouraged in Nigeria right now. But they're definitely saying things are getting better as younger people. The internet is growing, the telecom sector is growing. Where that's their area now. Social media, those opportunities there. So we are seeing opportunities, and I'm just hoping for the best that it does get better, so that those here who are interested don't be discouraged by like their parents, because there's a lot of the things as well. Your parents are saying to you, you're not ready for Nigeria, don't go, you're not ready for Africa, it's too much of a struggle, why would you do that here when you can get a job here? And that's another thing I want to say about your parents' encouragement. You know, those who have been there, you know, we need to have more of a positive mindset, be more like optimistic about what we can do in Africa. Forget it, like look at these new opportunities and see how we can tackle it, because it's all about finding solutions to problems where there are real opportunities, you know, instead of just focusing on it's a problem. You know, if we focus on finding solutions to these problems, I think, and encouragement from our parents and believing in that, a lot of us will find ways to overcome this in Africa, for example. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to address the following question to Mrs. Gwen. And that would be, how could leaders of today bring integration with the upcoming generations, particularly in politics? So basically, how can the current leaders engage or integrate with future generations in the area of this area of politics?
You know, I was just sitting and thinking about my own, and I think we should not forget that although I'm sitting and representing the seniors, I was also young once upon a time. And I think it is maybe when we are at this kind of platforms and we have this, what I call intergenerational dialogue, that we also remember when we were young. And I know my kids, usually when we are discussing, they always say, the Chatham rule here is don't say when you were young, because, you know, it's quite different. You know, the theme of this meeting is common good. And yesterday we had a whole discussion around common good. And I don't think we should move away from it. I think it should still be very relevant in whatever we are discussing. Because I sometimes feel when we are discussing, you know, empowerment and economic empowerment, that we are losing the basic who we are. And it becomes more of what we can do, and what we can do has got a lot to do with becoming a leader. Either you are in parliament or you are minister or you are this, but there are different levels of leadership. In fact, I was very impressed with the president of the Sierra Leonean football club, football association. Were you not impressed? Yes. What is it that impressed us about her? She was not sitting here and representing a political organization. She was representing something that is much more powerful than being a minister. Because the majority of our people love sports. Sports is what has created a positive image for our continent. Our culture is what has created a positive image of our continent. So when we are talking leadership, I want to move the discourse from just political leadership to leadership in so many different ways. And that is one way. She has used the power of sports to spur development. She has used the power of sports to encourage young people to move up and become something in life. And I'm using that as an example to partly answer your question. When I grew up, I was maybe fortunate or not fortunate, but I was a freedom fighter. I left in exile for 12 years fighting for the independence of my country. I had a common vision whether you were old or young. The struggle did not ask how old you were. The struggle expected each one of us to make a contribution to the independence of our country. And so I am sitting here and asking myself, 30 years, 40 years later, what vision do the African youth have? We had a vision of a liberated continent. We had a vision of a decolonized continent. What is the vision of our youth? Because it's only with a vision that you can hope to start the discourse of where you want to go, not what NIBIN's governance as a elder allows you to do. It's about, about creating that value system and that vision about wanting to serve the continent, and you can serve the continent in so many different ways. We talked about volunteerism. I want to hear you saying I'm a volunteer with the Red Cross. How many of you are volunteers of the Red Cross? I'm talking youth. Do you understand where I'm trying to get to? We should not always want to be the president of a country, or a member of parliament, or a minister to wanting to make a difference. There are so many different ways to do that. But I also agree that Africa must start to the point whereby we have a generational transition. The young people are becoming patient. They don't want to become leaders at the age of 60. So those of us that are today 60 and 70 must make room, must make space so that the youth can move into those positions in whatever way. So this is the kind of intergenerational debate and discussion that should go on, because I also feel very bad. If I find people in my country that have retired, 60 does not de-skill you. 60 does not make you less professional. 60 does not take away years of experience. But in our countries, the debates that are going on is like when you are aging, you have to go to the grave, I think. because the space becomes very small, very narrow. So we have to somehow disappear so that the youth can become visible. I think the continent has got a lot of space for all of us.
Oh, yeah.
We just need to really map out how can we not compete. I think earlier somebody says, how can we youth and elders complement each other? And that is the ground that we must find. That for me is the
And I would just like, before passing on the questions and answers to the public, ask His Excellency, what would you advise any young aspiring politician or anyone trying to contribute back to Africa? What should they do?
Just before I answer that, I just add a little anecdote to what she said. I think that there should be an understanding between the generations, that they are not in competition with each other, but that they are complementing each other. And in doing that, for us of the older generation, I mean, we should understand our young people, even in how we communicate with them. I had a funny experience with my son. I was going out with my wife, and I dressed first, and I came down, and I was in my suit with my harness tie and looking. I thought I was looking good. And my son said, Dad, you look cool. And I said, oh, thank you. And then his mom came down in her evening dress and said, oh man, you're looking hot. I do look cool and hot. And so even the language they speak is different. And so how do you hold a communication with them? You must understand their language. And that's something that I charge our generation to try and understand. And I think that the youth are driven by technology. And so as much as possible for those of the older generation, don't say you were born before computers. I mean, computers won't eat you up. You must learn to use them. It's the instrument of the new age. And so I find several of my colleagues who also make computers, maybe I happen to have done communications. I was Minister of Communications, and so the new technology is quite familiar with me. But these are the instruments that we can use to bridge the communication gap between the elderly and the young people. But the thing about going into politics is that you must have a passion for it. I didn't start with a passion for politics because it was something I didn't intend to do. My dad had a terrible experience with politics. He had been a minister in the first government. There was a coup d'etat, he was thrown into prison and all that. He came out very traumatized by it. And so for me, politics was a very negative experience for me. And so it was in later years, one, you need to acquire good education. Two, you must read widely and understand human nature. And three, you must have that passion, for leadership. And it starts with how you, one, ground your education, two, the experiences you have going through. For us, the learning stage for leadership was in student politics. And so as early as secondary school, university, one had become interested in leadership issues. And so going into leadership, even though accidental, once I found that, look, that was the calling I had, I just took an interest in it. And I think that if you have that passion, and like she said, it's not only for politics, but for other positions, there are other very critical positions of leadership that you need to prepare yourself for. And once you have the passion for it, you'll be able to make a success of it.
Thank you very much. We will now take a few questions from the public. If we can start with that lady over there. First row, yes.
Okay, I'm going to demonstrate something to you here. It's very simple. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a privilege to be here today. So I just want to go and do something very, very simple. And this is the barrier, right? So now I'm going to walk through the barrier because I No. You need to go back. No, it's an example. It's just an example. Okay, it's fine. So this is just an illustration of what we're talking about barriers, right? So the reason why I'm here is because of the common good. And I'm African, and I will let you know, my name is Angel Canal Samuel. My father is a former, he was a state governor in my country, in South Sudan, and he's a general, he passed away. So I'm here today because of the common good. And I came specifically for you, Your Excellency, to speak to you because we're having a war in my country, South Sudan. And I wanted to speak to you about something private because in Africa you have to find a level of people how to speak because His Excellency, you are president, so it's very easy to speak to my president. I have asked today here people, the organizers, to speak to you, but it's not possible.
I'm sorry, I just have to step in there. We just really need questions so we can see the
Yeah, I'm going to come to the question just 1 second. And the thief and lady, my son plays football, and I'm really interested in football. I wanted to speak to you to greet you, but I couldn't because of the barrier. Because this is evidence for VIP and business. My question is, I'm coming to it. My question is, we need to be patient. I'm interested and they're also waiting. My question is, how do we, here in the diaspora, okay, young or old, whatever, how do we cross that barrier? Because now, if I want to do this, how do I do it? Thank you very much.
I would just like to say on behalf of the CAST team, basically this is an opportunity for all of you to share thoughts and learn from our leaders. So basically we have sessions for networking, but due to different separate places. So we give you the chance and the opportunity to hear what they have to say and to ask them questions. That is the opportunity we're giving to you to speak with them, because you wouldn't have otherwise this chance. I'm just going to move to the next one. This lady over here. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm that educated. She's just talking about access to the ordinary person, and we've still got barriers there. So how do we remove the barriers? We should take down the barriers.
Barriers are just going to future. I mean, it has nothing to do. I'm going to be choosing someone else. Thank you. That guy over there at the end, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question goes to His Excellency. An African leader just recently said that my wife's place is in the kitchen, and in my country, Nigeria, we're having this debate about see or to vote, see or to rule, and for the rest. And you could see the resistance from the elderly ones because it looks like they feel threatened. And regions of the country you expect leadership in this particular issue are also even resisting it. My observation there is the fact that there is a wide gap in education about leadership in Africa. Like you rightly said, a lot of our schools and our education institution has nothing to offer on leadership. We come out of university without thorough leadership training, no leadership, no entrepreneurship training, and that is what you are seeing visibly happening all over the country and not the continent. So my question is, sir, are you going to be doing something about it? Talking to your pals all over the continent for the need to start inculcating leadership training in our education. Leadership training, leadership values in our education, and also the need to start taking education as a priority in that continent. Because if you look at the vast majority of the countries in that continent, education is treated like, well, okay, let us just do something about public schools. Because most of the people in power and in decision-making bodies have their children coming to school in this part of the world, and thereby they are neglected. You find schools in different parts of the country going on strikes. So what are you willing to do about this to educate your parents and also ensure that leadership comes into our education system?
Sorry, was this addressed to...
Former President.
Okay. Would you wish to reply?
Yeah, let me just make two quick comments on the two issues that were raised. I'll start with South Sudan. I mean, that civil war is a tragedy. I had the opportunity to visit Sudan when it was still a united country. I was in Khartoum, and I also visited Juba. And I realized that these were two different countries. I mean, the cultures were different, the people were different, you know. And so when the liberation war started with John Garang and all that, I mean, I could empathize that, yes, I mean, South Sudan had a case for a separate nationhood. And so when South Sudan was born as a nation, all of us felt proud. Africa's youngest country and all that. For those of us who were in leadership positions, we were eager to see how we could help this young baby grow. And so when I became president, I met President Salva Kiir, and I said, I mean, we're prepared to send them teachers and, you know, health workers to assist, you know, in South Sudan. And he invited me to come for a state visit, based on which we could sign some MOUs and exchange health professionals, because Ghana was producing more health professionals than we needed, and so we could afford to send some of them elsewhere. And then this war started. You know what happened? I ended up sending soldiers, peacekeepers, rather than health workers. Today, as I speak, I mean, it was in my time, I said they can then continue as peacekeepers. And so I have soldiers and policemen in South Sudan instead of doctors and nurses and teachers. And so that is a tragedy, you know, and it's just a war of egos. The president and the vice president start fighting, and then suddenly a whole nation is divided in a civil war. It's unfortunate. And much as, you know, we have tried to do what we can, you know, the civil war continues. There's a new effort, the AU and UN have put together a team. My former foreign minister is one member of the team, and they're making a bit of progress. I think that more because people are coming to the realization that none of the two sides can win that war. That war is going to continue forever. None of you can win that war. And so better to dialogue and work together as a nation. And so that's the comment I'll make about that. We have people with different orientations in leadership. And my wife's place is in the kitchen was the most unfortunate statement. I think the president was caught very unawares by whichever question was posed to him. But I do think that those are the things that we must do when we come to considering leadership. We must not be taken by the fanfare of the political campaign and the rallies and the symbols and all that. It is about the policies and the people's orientation. What is the president's orientation to women's empowerment? And it is only on the basis of that orientation that you will get my vote as a person who believes that women must be empowered on a 50-50 basis with men. What is the person's orientation to education? What is the person's orientation to youth empowerment? These are things we should listen to. Political parties prepare manifestos. I wonder how many people read those manifestos. But we must look at the leaders who are elected into office and see what their own orientation and policies are towards the things that we hold dear. And it's only on that basis that we must release that precious votes to put them in office. And so the next time you have an election in Nigeria, you should listen to what the person is saying, whether his wife belongs to the kitchen and not into the decision-making. And so listen to what they say, and on that basis, you decide whether to put in your vote or not. But there's a lot of peer discussion. Of course, we meet in ECOWAS, we meet in African Union, and then a lot of policy papers that come up, especially with women's empowerment, with youth, with free travel and movement amongst our countries and all that. And I believe that the young people are less inhibited than the elder people. I mean, for instance, I gave the example yesterday about free travel. I then asked them, why is it so difficult for us as Africans to travel across the continent? I mean, what is the problem? What's another African coming to steal in your country? We came up with a protocol for free movement of people and said that all African passport holders should be able to travel visa-free to each other's countries. And we pushed for it to be passed. At the last minute, some of the leaders developed jitters and said, no, let's hold on. There are a few things we need to sort out. What do we need to sort out? I went back home, and in 2016, in July, I passed the protocol and said African passport holders can apply for visa on arrival in Ghana. The sky didn't fall. I haven't seen a huge migration of Africans from somewhere to come and live in Ghana. And yet it has made it easier for business people to travel in and out of Ghana and do their business without any hassle. And so, yes, we'll continue to peer discuss, and I think that by example and taking initiative, we will all come to the same level that we are better off moving together than individually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we can take the last question, please, very quickly.
Thank you guys very much. I just firstly want to say thank you to everyone here. I'm here because my mom's on the panel. Many of you guys are here because you guys care. This is your continent. You guys took time out of your day to come and spend your entire time listening to this, so thank you. Thank you to all the speakers for all of your answering. My question as a youth and as someone that has run youth empowerment, I gave a speech to the President Jacob Zuma on youth empowerment because majority of kids in Eastern Cape didn't even have stationery. I've traveled to Uganda, I've traveled 14 different African countries in my lifetime. I'm a proud African. but I'm also a proud Englishman as well. And I need to let you guys know, this question is mainly for Mark, because I feel like you have been in the background and seen so many different kinds of African leadership. And we can talk all day long about getting young people in and this amazing change that Africa is going to get. But as far as I'm concerned, people don't understand what the plight of Africa is. We are a people that have been oppressed for so long, we don't even know who we are. This is the truth. I'm currently reading a book called The Destruction of Black Civilization. And we like to talk about Western colonialization and say this is who's caused us. Many people don't even talk about the Middle Eastern occupation that lasted for centuries before that. And my question is to Mark. We spoke about the richest people in Africa, people that accumulate massive amounts of wealth on things like oil. But let's be honest, the biggest reason why I and most young people don't even aspire to even get involved in Africa is because of corruption.
Yeah.
We see no way of any change in African corruption because our values are not there. We do not care about African people. We care about how much money can we accumulate as soon as we're in a position of power and then leave. And we are our own. We are the destruction to our own people. And as you've been able to see and observe, it doesn't matter who takes up that position. As soon as that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So something I've really, really tried to question in your experience. What do you see as a possible solution? And how do we actually combat corruption in our continent? And I know it's a difficult question, but in your experience.
How long do we have? Well, I share, thank you very much. I share something with you, perhaps not to such a degree, but I'm actually British and I'm also Australian. I was born in Australia, and so there are some cultural differences, not quite as many, but certainly the African experience has one thing to share in Australia, that my family once went on a one-way ticket to somewhere where they weren't expecting to go on a boat. So there is that in common. In terms of the issue of corruption, I think that it's certainly not limited to Africa. There's plenty of places in Europe where the same thing is. There's plenty of corruption in Britain too, but I think that where there is a difference here, and I think it probably counts America and maybe Australia too, is that people do get rich from politics after they've been in politics, or they enter politics already rich. And I think that that's in plenty of places, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, whatever you want to name, plenty of places in Europe where people do go into politics, or in some cases to make money, and in some cases, and in most cases, do get wealthy by being in office. And I think that, however, I do think there are winds of change on this. So I don't wish to sort of swirl around your question, but I think that there's plenty of encouragement, I think. And I think that starts with something that I actually spoke about yesterday, which was changes in the rise and deepening of democracy and multi-party democracy across Africa. And I think that what fundamentally corrupts is the inability to remove somebody from office. And we can all have elections. I mean, have elections in China. People put bits of paper into ballot boxes and they count them. That is not an election. That's a ballot, right? That's not democracy. That's counting bits of paper. And so there are lots of elements that make a governance system that has checks and balances in it that will never be perfect, but can be a counterweight to corruption. And I think that, dare I say, one thing that John Mahama did, President Mahama did, that I think, frankly, is in recent times probably the greatest thing that pretty much anyone in Africa has done in the last decade for democracy is standing down with good grace. And I think that Ghana has had changes of power between two parties here, two parties there. but you don't have many politicians who stand down with good grace. You know, look at. I believe you went over to the Gambia when you know the unusual gentleman who'd been president for some time had refused to go, and I think that's an example. I think that times are changing, so I think you have to start with that. Power comes from the people through the ballot box, but the people have the power to take it away. And when you realise you're on borrowed time, and then you don't get into office and you don't go, you just fill your boots, then people are more hesitant to fill their boots. And I think that starts, again, in South Africa, which you mentioned, one of the issues there, I think, the dangers there, and I don't think it will ultimately change, is I think Cyril Ramaphosa will probably be a very good president, certainly better than the gentleman he has recently replaced. But still, I think that the weakness there is that no one can challenge the ANC. And when one party basically has a dominance over power, whether that party has good intent or not, has good people in or not, doesn't really matter. That's not the issue. It's until there is a change of power through different parties being elected, not an internal, you know, family feud. Effectively, is how you change the leader. Then you know, the chances are that corruption won't necessarily get worse under good leadership, like Ramaphosa, I believe, will bring, but won't ultimately improve. So that I think is the key. The deepening of that, the longer that experience continues and deepens, I think the better. The last thing I'll say on this as well is that there's another reason for corruption as well, and corruption is not just about rich people; it's about poor people. And when poor people don't have jobs or opportunities for jobs, when people are poor and they have a degree and they still can't get a job, then they start turn to alternative methods of getting money. And what that means is that it perpetuates a system whereby rich people can hand down in like this feudal manner money to people who are asking for it upwards. Again, something else we talked about yesterday was one of my favourite topics of hatred, which is the European Union. And how the customs union in Europe has stopped by high tariffs the creation of jobs in Africa in additional production, not just extractive industries. So by creating a jobs market for young people and a normalised jobs market that is based on people's ability and based on people's qualifications, not who they know, who they happen to have as a family member, who their daddy was, then that stops the sort of the.
Mr. Forsey, I'm really sorry. We need to round up for the next session.
The point is made.
Thank you very much.